what's the Mike Tyson line? Everyone has a plan till they get punched in the mouth or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like that. Maybe not quite so negative, but opportunity is a wonderful thing. And having learned that from Richard right at the beginning of my tenure as CEO, I think has been a valuable thing to know.
Over your time at Virgin, obviously there have been a lot of successes. What do you think is the biggest success for you that you've achieved over your time leading the company?
Well, there have been a lot of business successes during that time. We've established some fantastic companies in the past 12 years or so. Virgin Hotels stands out. Virgin Voyages stands out. I think, though, the biggest success by far was managing through the pandemic, where the fact that we recapitalised 7 businesses that were in difficulty probably saved about 28,000 jobs. And that is the thing I am proudest of.
And what about the other side of the coin, failures? You must have made mistakes along the way as well.
Certainly, yeah. I have, and we have in business. There's no question that it was an enormous disappointment to us that Virgin Orbit's launch in the UK was unsuccessful. But even then, I look back on everything that Virgin Orbit achieved technologically, and I am certain that what they achieve with low Earth orbit launch of satellites from the air is a technology that will be a springboard for others.
It must take a lot of energy, though, to go from one business to another, to keep going 5, 6, 7 days a week all year round for all of those years.
I suppose so.
How do you take a break? What do you do to relax and unwind?
Look, I love...
You take a Virgin holiday, I'm assuming.
Yeah, sure. That sounds great. I actually, having recently been on Virgin Voyages, must say if you want to have a restful holiday and something that rejuvenates you, that is a great opportunity.
Post-pandemic, you're still travelling quite a lot. What kind of impact does that have on you? It must be difficult to manage your time, manage your family time as well. And also it's a lot of energy as well, getting on a plane and travelling halfway across the world.
It is, but it's always worth it. I mean, I think, if you're going to go for an in-person meeting, first of all, I mean, there's nothing can replace it. There's nothing like an in-person interaction as opposed to doing something on a screen. So it's still the top of the pyramid. And so it's a trade-off. It is a use of your time, but it comes with the territory. In terms of my family, my wife and I very much run things as a partnership, and she is very comfortable with the idea that I will be away some of the time, quite a lot of the time, and when I'm there, I make sure that I'm there, fully engaged, fully present, not flipping in and out of consciousness or or obsessed by doom scrolling.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Boardroom Uncovered, powered by City A.M. My name's John Robinson, City A.M.'s UK editor, and in this edition I'm joined by the CEO of Virgin Group, Josh Bayliss. Having first joined Virgin after an interview in the back of Sir Richard Branson's car while stuck in a traffic jam, the New Zealander now leads one of the best-known British brands of the last 60 years. Synonymous with its billionaire owner, the Virgin name adorns the signs of airplanes, hotels, cruise ships, and spacecrafts. But what are the challenges of running a global business with only one high-profile shareholder? And, after decades of pushing the boundaries, what new frontiers could Virgin look to explore in the coming years? Without any further delay, let's dive in. Josh Bayliss, CEO of Virgin Group, thank you very much for coming on Boardroom Uncovered today. Obviously, you are the boss of one of the biggest British success stories of the last 50 or 60 years. With one shareholder, one pretty high-profile shareholder, what's that like?
It's an honour actually to work with somebody who's such an icon of British business and has been for such a long time. I think when Richard started out in business, entrepreneurship was not a phrase that was widely known or used, and partly because of people like Richard over the ensuing 50 odd years, that's changed. So much so that I think there's a real opportunity in this country, especially, and in fact all over the world, for entrepreneurs to be able to take those risks that lead to the creation of wonderful new businesses, wonderful new consumer experiences, and Virgin was a trailblazer in that. It's a real privilege to be part of that story, part of that journey. As to the point about having one shareholder, there are pros and cons, I think, to all ownership structures. My own view, maybe based on my experience, but I've seen all different types of ownership structures, and I think having a single point of reference as a CEO certainly makes life simpler. It's not the same type of situation as a public company, for example, where you may not even know your shareholders. Of course, you have an accountability to them, but you don't necessarily have that relationship to really be able to listen to what they think. In private companies where you have a number of different shareholders, my experience is that very often the CEO has to be quite adept at the politics between the different shareholder forces, and I simply don't have that in my role. And having the Branson family as the point of contact, and Richard specifically as the founder of the group, makes my life a lot easier when it comes to planning, decision making, responding, and all of the things that a CEO has to do.
What's your relationship like with him?
Very open and frank. It's long-standing. I first met Richard in 2004, so we've known each other for 20 years, and in that time we've seen many business successes together. Of course, they haven't all been successes. But I think that through the experience that we have had together, we've built a relationship of real openness and trust. We speak very frequently, and there is a total candor to the way that we deal with one another, as you might expect.
You said that there are pros and cons with any ownership structure, and one with only one shareholder. What are the pros of just having the Branson family that you're answering to?
I do think that there's something about family-owned businesses which solves one of the problems that many other business structures suffer from, and that is timescale. Families tend to think over the very long term. And that is a point of differentiation from public companies, quarterly earnings reports, half-yearly analysts, capital markets days, all of those sorts of time pressures. Private equity-owned businesses, 3 to 5 year hold periods, recycling of capital, the need to be formulating an exit, all of those things. I think within our group, our average hold period is about 17 years or something like that. And the reason why that's beneficial is twofold. One, we've been adept at compounding equity value over the long term without needing to try to find those exit points. And it also supports our brand. We like to remain invested in businesses for the long term because they carry our name in many cases. And where our name goes, we like to be able to play a part in the governance of the business. And so having a family as the ultimate shareholder who have those very long-term time horizons makes life a little easier.
And I suppose you know what I'm going to ask now. What are the negatives of that?
The negatives, well, I suppose the obvious negative is you have a single source of capital. And in public companies, for instance, you can tap capital markets to raise equity from other investors over time. We've dealt with that very effectively because of our structure, where our investments are compartmentalized into the different portfolio businesses that we invest in and manage. And we'll raise capital for each of those businesses as and when required, whereas at the center of the group, of course, we own 100% of everything, and we haven't needed to raise more capital. With that, of course, you give up some degree of control in each of the portfolio businesses, because we simply cannot afford to fund all of our ambitions to do all of the many things that we have the opportunity and desire to do. But overall, I think on balance, that's probably the right trade-off for us.
And by the time you first met Sir Richard, of course, 2004, he'd been in business for quite a few decades by that point and been incredibly successful.
Yeah.
Over the last 20 years, you must have learned so much from him.
Yeah, certainly, absolutely. Look, my mantra is that I try to learn something new every day, and working with somebody like Richard, I find there is plenty on offer. I can remember when the summer of 2011, when I went to him with a strategy as the new CEO. This is the plan. This is what I was thinking, and he listened very attentively, and at the end said to me, this is all great, but never lose sight of the fact that opportunity will come at you when you least expect it. And that one lesson has been something that has come back to me so many times in subsequent years, because it remains true, and it does happen all the time. So even what's the Mike Tyson line? Everyone has a plan till they get punched in the mouth, or something like that. It's a little bit like that. Maybe not quite so negative, but opportunity is a wonderful thing. And having learned that from Richard right at the beginning of my tenure as CEO, I think has been a valuable thing to know.
Let's take you right back, because obviously you're from quite a long way from where you're currently sitting now in the UK. Tell me about your journey from New Zealand. Was it always a plan to leave New Zealand to pursue a career?
When I was growing up, I couldn't imagine leaving New Zealand. It was quite unusual for me to leave my neighbourhood. My father was English. Or he remains English, but he also remains in New Zealand. But so I had a passport. I knew that there was this opportunity, I suppose, to go and connect with another place. It was really only after university that I really seriously contemplated leaving New Zealand for other opportunities. And at the time, I was thinking of going to North America, but that didn't pan out. And actually an opportunity arose to go to work in Barcelona. So I took that opportunity, basically blind. So I decided to leave New Zealand to move to Barcelona. And on the way, I transited through London, where I met a young lady who's now my wife. And she was the reason why I stayed in Barcelona for just a few months before coming back to the UK.
So you just bumped into her?
Actually, I met her on my very first day in London.
Really?
So I had a very close friend who had come to New Zealand, an English girl, had come to New Zealand, had ended up working in a cafe with my mother, and had said to me, if you ever come to London, you need somewhere to stay, just give me a call. So I did, and my wife was her flatmate. So we met on the first day that I was in London. Must be millions and millions to one.
Yeah, there's a real sliding doors moment.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Very lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you always feel that you had to leave New Zealand in order to pursue a career? And obviously, you didn't really think about it until university, but when you really did start to think about it, was it inevitable then that you would have to leave the country of your birth in order to pursue a career that you wanted to?
Look, it wasn't inevitable, but it was my preference. What I realised about New Zealand, first of all, it's a fabulous place to grow up. The education system was wonderful to me. The natural environment. There's a lot of great positives about New Zealand. The two things that I reflected on as I began my career was it's a very, very long way away from everywhere else. And even in this modern world, that sense of connectivity matters. And at the time that I was living there, the population was between 3 and 4 million people. And when you're a 2.5, 3 hour flight from the nearest major city, and you've only got 3 million people in the country, it's a very small market. And I think I really wanted to go and spread my wings and see what the world had to offer.
It's an incredibly big decision, though, isn't it? Do you remember looking back at that, thinking, "Well, I'm not too sure about this." Got a bit of trepidation, a bit nervous about this, because moving from New Zealand to halfway across the world is massive for anybody.
Yeah, so I was 25. I didn't have any trepidation at all until I arrived in Barcelona with my perfect university degree Spanish and realized that everybody spoke Catalan. And my Spanish was pretty useless. Then I was nervous. But I think, when you're young, I think it's the time to take risks and be bold. And I didn't feel that sense of trepidation. It's interesting now looking at my own children as they grow up and go to university, and my daughter's almost 20, my son's 17, and I can see they have that same sense of drive and ambition and fearlessness that I think I probably had at that age.
But, you eventually wind up at Virgin, but I read somewhere that you actually just your first instinct when they approached you with the job of general counsel was to say no.
Yeah.
Why was that?
That's true. So I was working at a law firm called Slaughter and May, which is a fantastic law firm in the city, working on some of the most fascinating and interesting deals that you could imagine. I was in my last year before I would have made partner at the firm, and I suppose to some extent I was on a track that felt like the culmination of all of the years of my work up to that point, and I felt like I was about to get a prize for having been successful in my career up to that point. And it was actually the Virgin opportunity was the first sort of tap I needed. At almost exactly the same time, my daughter was born, within the same month, I think it was, as I was approached for the Virgin job. And my wife and I bought our first house. And I think I suddenly thought to myself, life is an adventure, and there's only one of them. So if I don't take this opportunity, I'll always wonder about it. And the thing that was most appealing, honestly, was the idea that I could be a decision maker, become much more commercially self-determining, if you like, and help to drive a business to reach conclusions and grow value over time. That seemed much more appealing to me.
And I'd imagine that your interview for General Counsel was a lot more straightforward than your interview for CEO.
Actually, my interview for General Counsel, so at the time, the senior team at Virgin was scattered all over the world, and I think I had something like 8 interviews, the 8th of which was with Richard, and the preceding 7 were with small groups of executives who were in different parts of New York, Sydney, Switzerland, London. It was really scattered, unlike we are now. We're very concentrated in London and New York. But at that time it was very scattered. So I spent a lot of time traveling, meeting people, and then ultimately my final interview was with Richard.
Yes.
In London.
And then of course your interview with Richard for the CEO position wasn't quite what you expected.
Actually, it was the general counsel position that was the one that I didn't expect.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it was when he hired me to come and work at Virgin.
Right, sorry.
That was the one that was a bit of a surprise. I showed up at his house and he answered the door and said, I've double booked you. I'm afraid I've got to go. So you can either come back tomorrow or come with me in the back of a car. So I said, sure, let's get in the car.
And you had about 2.5 hours of just interrogating him.
Yes. Well, he had 20 minutes of interrogating me, and then I think he'd run out of questions after 20 minutes. So it was great. I had a couple of hours. We got stuck in a traffic jam, and it was a perfect opportunity to really get to know Richard as a person.
It sounds like quite a surreal situation. During that conversation, did you just sit there and think, I'm just a boy from New Zealand and I'm questioning a billionaire in the back of his car on the way to win awards do?
I suppose so. I think not having grown up in the UK, I don't think I had that same sense of the celebrity of Richard. I was really talking to him about what motivated him as a person, beyond his business ambitions. That seemed to me to be the most important thing to get to know.
Is that easier then to get to know him and a better foundation for your relationship if you don't have that celebrity element? You just look at him as a business leader and as a person.
Yes,
it's a bit easier.
I think so. I think so. I mean, perhaps I'm wrong to do this, but I tend to think that of everybody. It's really who they are, not how much money they've made or how successful they are, or who are they and what motivates them.
Okay. And obviously, you know, been in the job since 2011, the top job. How has your leadership style changed over that period? What's it like?
Yes, well, I think inevitably it has. When I became CEO, I was 38 years old. That is, to say the least, very young, I think. And in retrospect, it was a big opportunity for me, but it was a big chance that Richard and the board took, appointing me. And I had a co-CEO initially, briefly for the first year. So, in hindsight, I think I probably learnt about leadership on the job. And in the first year and a half, that was really challenging. The business was in a difficult spot. We had a lot of work to do to restructure things. So trying to grow into that leadership style while also restructuring the business was tough. And then, over time, it really was about setting a vision for people and thinking about not just the immediate future, but the longer term and building value over the longer term. Pivoting my style to be much more about delivering a vision for people to understand and get behind. And that was all pretty good up until 2020. Then there was COVID, when I went from being probably very consensual as a leader, very open, trying to listen more than I spoke, all of that stuff. In the first year of COVID, that was really not feasible to run things that way. And so as we faced 7 businesses in crisis, it was important to be very decisive, very quick, take on board as much information as you could as quickly as possible and reach a fast decision and move forward.
Was that quite difficult then, because it's such a departure from your natural style?
Well, actually, I think it was easy to slip into that mode because that was the set of circumstances we found ourselves in. What was interesting was coming out of it again, and as things got a lot better and we've come back to focusing on the future and growth and the development of the brand and the investment portfolio and all of those things again, was trying to pull back from that single point of decision making and trying to develop again that culture of consensus and an openness.
It's slightly easier being the leader when things are going well, but obviously Virgin, during the pandemic as well, faced really difficult times. How are you in those high pressure situations? Do you think that you deal well with them?
I think so. I think I tend to remain calm. I think I focus on the things that matter the most. Prioritization is the crucial thing, and when you're in crisis, and we were in sort of polycrisis, I think if you didn't prioritize, you simply wouldn't make it. I think I have an ability to be able to be clear about what matters the most.
And Virgin, of course, have got so many businesses with the Virgin name, and then so many investments. How do you keep your head across it all?
Fantastic team of people. We're blessed to have some very, very talented people in our team who work very hard for us and do a great job at the group level, of course, and also within the Virgin companies. We think of our management teams within our Virgin companies the CEOs almost like entrepreneurs in their own right, setting up and running their own businesses. And that structure has been something that we've consistently looked to develop over the years. From my point of view, I'm very fortunate that what we do I find so interesting. All of the different business models, I can remember very early on learning about the details of telecoms businesses and finding them completely fascinating, and then moving on to aviation and finding it completely fascinating. And now I find I can move from one to the other and take ideas that you find in one business into the other. And so that idea of cross-pollinating, I suppose, the businesses means that the breadth of interest that we have within the portfolio is a real strength.
It must take a lot of energy, though, from go from one business to another, to keep going 5, 6, 7 days a week all year round for all of those years.
I suppose so.
How do you take a break? What do you do to relax and unwind?
Look, I love...
You take a Virgin holiday, I'm assuming.
Yeah, sure. That sounds great. I actually, having recently been on Virgin Voyages, must say if you want to have a restful holiday and something that rejuvenates you, that is a great opportunity. We do as a family try to spend as much time as we can together. We try to spend a lot of time outdoors. We're all very physically active, and I personally tend to find that some of my best moments of unwinding is doing things like riding my bike up a mountain, or ski touring, or swimming, or whatever it is that just gets me into that rhythm where I can really let my mind roam free, if you like. And I tend to find that I solve quite a lot of problems in those moments in ways that maybe I wouldn't if I was sitting in front of my laptop.
Oh, that's interesting. Are you able, though, when you do take time off, to completely take time off, or do you find that you're answering calls, answering emails, there's always 10% of your brain thinking about work? Are you able to really relax, or is it quite difficult to do?
I think if my wife were here, she would say probably two things. The best holiday of the year is Christmas.
Right.
Because it tends to be the case that everything does go quiet over Christmas, at least for a few days, which is great. And she would also say that if we're going to have a holiday during the year, it really should be 2 weeks, because the first week I'm probably in unwinding mode, but still pretty engaged. And second week, maybe I'm a little bit more relaxed.
But part of your job, obviously, is a lot of travel. You've got businesses all across the world. I've read somewhere that you go around the world 8 times a year.
That was true before the pandemic.
Before the pandemic,
I
is it
think,
less now?
Look, I definitely travel less these days. I mean, we talked, I think we collectively, the world, talked about the ability of technology to transform the way that we would do business. I'm not sure any of us really believed it until we had no choice. And in 2020, I can remember coming to our last in-person board meeting thinking, oh wow, I wonder what it's going to be like after this and whether the technology will in fact work. And we agreed we'll shut the office, we're all going to go to our homes, and we expected there to be a lockdown, there was, and we really didn't know. And I remember doing my first all hands update to our employees after probably maybe 3 or 4 weeks into the pandemic, I suppose. And I can remember looking at my laptop screen, and I was on transmit mode, and the technology at that point didn't allow me to see anybody looking back at me. So for about 40 minutes, I was looking at my own face on the laptop thinking, I don't know if anyone's hearing this or not. As it happened, of course, several hundred people were in fact listening, so it was all okay. But I think having learnt that the technology does work and trusting in the technology has definitely given us an opportunity to travel a bit less.
But even, you're travelling less than you were pre-pandemic. Post-pandemic, you're still travelling quite a lot. What kind of impact does that have on you? It must be difficult to manage your time, manage your family time as well. And also it's a lot of energy as well, getting on a plane and travelling halfway across the world.
It is, but it's always worth it. I mean, I think, if you're going to go for an in-person meeting, first of all, I mean, there's nothing can replace it. There's nothing like an in-person interaction as opposed to doing something on a screen. So it's still the top of the pyramid. And so it's a trade-off. It is a use of your time, but it comes with the territory. In terms of my family, my wife and I very much run things as a partnership, and she is very comfortable with the idea that I will be away some of the time, quite a lot of the time, and when I'm there, I make sure that I'm there, fully engaged, fully present, not flipping in and out of consciousness or or obsessed by doom scrolling.
Over your time at Virgin, obviously there have been a lot of successes. What do you think is the biggest success for you that you've achieved over your time leading the company?
Well, there have been a lot of business successes during that time. We've established some fantastic companies in the past 12 years or so. Virgin Hotels stands out, Virgin Voyages stands out. I think, though, the biggest success by far was managing through the pandemic, where the fact that we recapitalized 7 businesses that were in difficulty probably saved about 28,000 jobs. And that is the thing I am proudest of.
Mm. And what about the other side of the coin, failures? You must have made mistakes along the way as well.
Certainly, yeah. I have, and we have in business. There's no question that it was an enormous disappointment to us that Virgin Orbit's launch in the UK was unsuccessful. But even then, I look back on everything that Virgin Orbit achieved technologically, and I am certain that what they achieved with low Earth orbit launch of satellites from the air is a technology that will be a springboard for others.
Mm. What do you put Virgin's success down to? Because it's been, top of the British business pyramid for many decades now, I suppose.
Yes. Well, first of all, I think the thing that we could not do without is our people at the front line. There's something very special about people when they put on the red uniform or they pin on the lapel pin. I think it gives them a sense of authority to be themselves, engage with our customers as human beings, and really go the extra mile. And we're very fortunate that the people who want to come work with us tend to be people who want to do the right thing by our customers. That's the secret sauce. As a brand, I think our strength is in focusing on businesses where we can offer a differentiated customer experience, be the challenger, upend the status quo, do things a bit differently with a sense of style and personality and just a little bit of an authentic identity. And that rinse and repeat of give people the experience they want, be entrepreneurial, find the unmet need, find the pain point and remove it. Whatever it is, the little detail points in the culture, that's what we try to do relentlessly day in, day out in all of our businesses, and it seems to have gone okay for us.
And the business environment in the UK, but across the world, is quite challenging at the moment. What are the main challenges that Virgin are facing over the next few years?
Well, I think actually in many respects we're coming out of some of the more difficult financial challenges that we've had, especially with inflation and hopefully with the cost of living, which has been a real challenge for a number of people. The geopolitics are not great, I must say. We're in the middle of 2 very, very significant wars that we talk about in the media, but there are many others. And they have had an impact on our businesses. They've had an impact on our operations, and so we've had to deal with that. I think the political landscape remains somewhat volatile and uncertain as we look out into the future, and so we will have to navigate that as best we can. We tend to focus on the things that we can control. And that doesn't just mean the things that affect us. It might mean the communities that we operate in, or the impact that the current circumstances are having on our people outside of work. For example, in the Casbah, our resort property in Morocco, there was an earthquake, which was devastating for the local village where many of the colleagues at the property work. And so focusing on how we could support them to get their lives back on track after that. That's the sort of thing that we do in order to try to overcome these kinds of situations.
And what does the future look like for Virgin over the next 5 years? If you get your crystal ball out,
well,
what's it going to look like?
I think we're at a really exciting moment, actually. We've developed a great portfolio of businesses, and they are doing better and better. We're seeing great return to profitability across some of our very large companies all over the world. Virgin Australia, Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Hotels, Virgin Voyages, they're doing brilliantly. From my point of view, the thing that you can look forward to over the next 5 years is much more connectivity between those businesses. While it's been terrific for us to build these businesses side by side, actually we need them to link arms to a greater extent. So our loyalty platform, Virgin Red, gives people the opportunity to be recognised and rewarded as they go from one Virgin company to another, and we're going to make sure that we really turn up the dial on that and increase the connectivity, so we can personalise people's experience, so we can really tell them that we understand that they're part of the wider Virgin family, not just one Virgin business.
And is there a Virgin brand that you use in your personal life?
Many of them.
Yeah,
Many of them. I'm a Virgin Money customer. I use Virgin Atlantic, obviously, very frequently. Virgin Australia I use whenever I'm there. I stay in Virgin hotels all the time, including, I'm very pleased that there's a Virgin hotel in Edinburgh, because my daughter's university is University of Edinburgh. So whenever
that's not why it opened. Obviously.
That's not why it opened, no. But it is a beautiful hotel, and I love staying there.
And so, talking of hotels, there are plans to open one in London very soon.
That's right.
London obviously is not short of a few hotels. So how is it going to be different to the others on the market?
That's right. Well, you might say that the aviation industry isn't short of aircraft. When you get on most of them, they tend to be relatively personality-free aluminium tubes, which are either made by Airbus or Boeing. When you get on a Virgin Atlantic or a Virgin Australia flight, you get that warm welcome, that sense of personality, the sense of identification and personalisation that comes with the Virgin experience. And we'll be looking to do exactly the same thing that we do for our customers at the Virgin Hotel in New York, or in New Orleans, or in Chicago, or on Necker Island, or at Ulusaba. We'll be bringing that to London, that same special brand heritage, that same sense of engaging you as a person rather than just as a client.
And is London the only English city that you're looking at the moment? Obviously, you've got one in Edinburgh at the moment. Are you looking at Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds, or anywhere else?
Yeah, we're looking across the UK, as I mentioned. We already have one in Edinburgh. We've looked at many in London over the past 10 years. This is the first. Don't think it'll be the last. It certainly won't be the last in the UK. There are a number of other UK sites that are underway, and I think watch the space. Hopefully there'll be more news soon.
And one final question: has Sir Richard managed to persuade you to get on the spacecraft?
I don't know whether or not it's about Richard persuading me to get on the spacecraft. We've got we've got a lot of customers who have been waiting a long time to get on board one of our spaceships, and we're delighted that we've just had another successful flight to take people to space. Once we can get our customers, who are an amazing group of people. I was with the London astronaut group a few weeks ago, and they really are the most remarkable group of people and adventurers. If I can squeeze myself into one day, then I'd be glad to share the spot with them.
Well, you'd be braver than me. I don't think I could do it.
Oh, really? Oh, no. Having been and watched Richard go up in July of 2021, I must say the whole experience was so remarkable and so utterly professional. I thought it was quite amazing. My problem, if there is one, will be persuading my wife, who is a very nervous flyer on commercial aircraft. So telling her that I'm off for the weekend to go to space may be a bit of a bridge too far.
And you can't not tell her, I suppose.
I definitely can't not tell her. No. After 22 years of marriage, I think honesty is the best policy.
Absolutely. Josh Bayliss, thank you very much for coming on Boardroom Uncovered today.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.